Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. In this video we are going to discuss about derivative of a product, how to differentiate when you find a multiplication of two functions. So remember, it is about a multiplication of two functions. If you have a multiplication but with a function and a constant, you don't need to apply this. It is just a special case for a function times a function, right? If you encounter with a question of a function times with a function, then you need to use this, right? At a glance it looks complicated, but it is actually quite simple, the formula. So the formula is u times v prime plus v times u prime. So the use of prime is not being emphasized in my class, but actually prime is another terms being used for differentiation. So if you have back then y equal to x and differentiate it, you say dy over dx, right? Another way for it to represent dy over dx, we can also write y prime. So for this case, this prime here represent the differentiation of v, a differentiation of u. So basically later on we'll see how we define u and v and proceed with the differentiation. So the differentiation process is exactly the same. The difference is just that we are going to use the formula. So let's look at the first example. Okay, so basically you can see here we are actually having a equation of multiplication between two functions. So this indicate that we need to use the product rule. So the product rule again is u v primes plus v u prime. Alright, so basically to get the dy dx, or let's use prime here, so the y prime, it is equal to this. Okay, so let me just make it okay over here so that we actually avoid a confusion. So because we have u and v, of course we need to define u and v. How to define u and v? We are going to define one function as u and another function as v. So let us define this one as u and this one as v. So the next thing to do is to look for the differentiation or the u prime and v prime. So for u prime here, it is equal to 12x squared, and v prime here is equal to 8x, right? So now that we have these four functions, we can just input it in our formula. So we have y prime equal to u, which is 4x root of 3 minus 7 times with v squared, which is 8x, plus v, which is 2x to the power 4 plus x, times with u squared, which is 12x squared. So just expand it together. So we are going to have 32 x to the power of 4 minus 56x, and then plus with 12 and 4, you are going to get 12 and 2, sorry, 24 to the power of 6 plus with 12x to the power of 3. So because of you don't have the same terms of x, right? So the best that we can do is just to rearrange it in order. Plus 12x3 plus 32x4 plus 24, this is x, right? X 24x6. Right, so another thing that we can do is factorization, but it is actually not necessary for this part, so we can actually leave it like this. Okay, so that is one example for product rule. Let's look at another one. All right, for this next question, let's define everything and input it in the formula of product rule. So for this one, right, basically there's nothing much that we can do. Maybe we can just simplify this one, right, and leave this as it is, and that will be the answer. So let's look at maybe the exercise question. Okay, let's define everything and put it into our formula. So given that this two function is actually the same kind of function, which is a polynomial function, so basically we can simplify this. Don't just leave it like this. And by expanding it, this is what you should get. So you can pause the video to look at the working process, right? And how do we get this? Okay, let's look at the next. Okay, for this question, we can see that it is actually trigo function times with ln and exponent. So I can expect that the answer, when we have differentiated it, we might not be able to expand it further. So let's do it. Let's define the u and v and put it in our formula. Alright, so this is the answer. Now you can try the other questions on your own, also on the tutorial. Try it on your own, and we'll share the answer of the working process later on. Now let's look at the next one, which is the question rule. So for the question rule, what is it actually? It is a rule where you need to use when you encounter with a function that being divided, right? So two function being divided, then you will need to use question rule. So what is actually question rule? If again, it might look a bit complicated if you look at it in this view, but if you try to put it in prime, right, so you'll get you can say that it is actually y prime, or the differentiation of dy dx equal to v u prime, v times with u prime, right, minus u times v prime over v squared. So again, you are playing with u and v, and you differentiate u and v. You just need to sort it out in this formula. So let's write it out. So we will not do the example because you can look at the steps by yourself. Let's see exercise A. Let's define the u and v and put it in the formula. So basically this is how it should look like, but as previously, when we have the two function that is in the same form, which is for this case the two function of polynomial, we should be able to simplify it further. Let's try to do that. So this is the final answer. Again, you can pause the video to see the working process, right? So let's move to the next one. Let's do this one more question, right, to wrap up the question rule. So again, define the U and V, put it in the formula. So this is what we get, and because of they are the U and V is kind of from a different kind of functions, right? One, we have ln x, we have cos, and we have polynomial. So when you put them together, you can actually sort of leave it like that, and this can be your final answer. So that's it for product rule and question rule. Right? Basically, you are conducting the same kind of derivative depending on what function that you have. Use the rule, use the rule, whether it is power rule or whether it is constant or exponential or trigo, but put it in the formula. You should be familiar with the formula for product and question rule. Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum.